Hi, my name is Venezia Sanchez, and I'm going to be vlogging on week 9's race relations. I'm going to be answering questions 3 and 4, and question 3 says, according to what is racial domination, what is the difference between ethnicity and race? Race specifically is a symbolic category, not a naturalistic category, and the symbolic category marks the differences between groups based on their phenotype and their ancestry. Phenotype is physical appearance, which is why race is mainly dependent on skin color, and ancestry is family history. Like I said, it's not a naturalistic category, so it's not created by nature, it's created by humans. And ethnicity is a shared lifestyle that is dependent on culture and family history. So, wherever you grew up and how you were raised. My race is Hispanic, and my ethnicity is Puerto Rican. And the next question is, in what ways is your race both marked and made? And in the text it said that describe that marked and made is gestures and different lifestyles. So the way my race was marked and made is, in my household I just always grew up around my family speaking Spanish, which is extremely fast spoken language. So that would be how we talk to one another. Usually our family eats foods that are extremely seasoned, which is usually with adobo or sazon. So that's how my culture was built. And in my family, my parents made a big point of making sure we respect our elders, and they also instilled gestures like always hugging and kissing our family members, like on the cheek when we see them and when we leave, because if not, it was considered a disrespect, and disrespecting adults in my culture, or my family, which I'd say is my culture, is frowned upon. So, and also my mom and dad have made it a big point that in a Hispanic family, a female, which kind of brings back to gender relations, a female in a Hispanic family should know how to cook. And that was extremely emphasized. So I would say those are what marked my race and my ethnicity. And does your race and or ethnicity shape your identity? I would say it does, because I do identify as Hispanic. It's not just what people perceive me as, because I feel like Hispanic cultures are different than other races, so I think it identifies me as a person, and it could differ than other families, so I would say Puerto Rican kind of narrows down the race and helps me further narrow down my identity, because different Hispanic countries do different cultures, and I feel like Puerto Rican cultures and things specific to my lifestyle help me identify, and were definitely crucial in expressing who I am as a person. And family history is very important in my family. It is always expressed that you should know your roots and where you come from, so that definitely helps explain my identity, or how I identify. Question 4, it says, according to what is racial domination, what are the fallacies of racism? The 5 fallacies of racism are individualistic, tokenistic, ahistorical, legalistic, and fixed. I'm going to be talking about individualistic, tokenistic, and ahistorical as my 3. Individualistic is when a person sees, or a group of people, whoever believes in the fallacy, believes that being racist is a crime and is unacceptable, and they're considered a racist, and whoever doesn't commit the crime is not racist. And for example, individualistic brought up intentionality, and my example was not taking an Uber just because you see the driver's African American, and intentionality is like the verses to the fallacy, saying that the fallacy is obviously not the best way to perceive racism, but with seeing an Uber driver, are you intentionally not taking the Uber because you don't want to, or are you not taking it because you see the driver isn't who you would want him to be racially? Tokenistic is when you see one person in that race being very successful and decide to throw away and not believe there's any other racial obstacles because that one person in that race is being very successful and is the outlier of basically the outlier and the low population of individuals who aren't suffering the racial obstacles. And for my example, I used Morgan Freeman as an actor, and just because he's an actor doesn't mean there aren't other African Americans that are in a low income family, and there's a minimal percentage that are successful, so everybody's pretty much focusing on that little percentage, but that's a fallacy, the tokenistic fallacy. I also did ahistorical, which means that everything in the history is too far gone to like matter now, and it's not going to impact anything that's happening now, which is false. And for my example, I put segregation in the late 19th century wouldn't impact our ideals now, which is completely false. It obviously would, because that was basically not the starting point, but that was one of the events that led up to integrating schools, and everything that we think now is based off what happened in the past with Europe coming to, or European countries coming to the United States, and how they perceived Native Americans. So for my two questions that I'd like to raise, I'd like to ask, would racial formation really be drastically changed if past events changed, like in history? Because, like I was saying, the Native Americans being perceived by Europeans as others, and Europeans are like the Christians. If that was different, would racism be perceived different, or would there be different racial profiling? And I also wanted to raise a question on if an individual was more exposed to more than one culture or lifestyle, how do they determine or identify their ethnicity or ethnical background, considering that ethnicity is based on their history and cultural history and what they're basically exposed to in their lifestyle. And to answer Austin's question about what event I experienced culturally as a child, I would say definitely my mother teaching me how to cook at a young age to instill knowing how to cook when I'm older, because a big thing in my family, my grandmother and my mom, my aunts, well, my titis, that's what we call them, know how to cook, and they pass down recipes that are in our culture, so that was probably a very big cultural event that happened as a child. But that's the end of my vlog, and that's for week 9, race relations. Thank you for listening.